Bom, todos que lidam com criatividade e estratégia sabem que zona de conforto, parece até um clichê falar isso, né, Verônica? Não é o melhor espaço para trazer realmente inovação e grandes soluções. Soluções que saiam do básico, do óbvio, né? Por outro lado, quantas pessoas também estão entendendo que a tensão que pode ser gerada no momento do desconforto, da não zona de conforto, pode realmente ser um motivador e ser dar um gás para que novas soluções apareçam. A publicidade e a nossa área, ela precisa se adaptar cada vez mais e entender que essa tensão e esse desconforto pode trazer perspectivas incríveis e gerar soluções muito inovadoras. Rob Campbell, que é inglês, planejador estratégico, vou até aqui relembrar aqui o guia dele, em breve, chefe de planejamento e estratégia da Colenso BBDO, vai nos explicar um pouco e falar sobre a sua perspectiva sobre como a tensão e sair dessa zona de conforto pode realmente trazer soluções inovadoras. Acho que esse painel, essa palestra vai ser incrível. Vamos que vamos, roda aí.
Hi, my name's Robert. It's a great pleasure to be here. Unfortunately, I don't speak Portuguese, so a big thank you to whoever is translating this for me. Thank you so much. My presentation is called Perfect is as boring as fuck. It's very much focused on my industry, which is the creative and advertising industry. And it's come about because I'm quite despondent at how many people are simply doing things that they think are right based on what were the rules of the past rather than what is where culture is heading. And for me, it's a celebration of those who fail themselves forward, who try things, who push boundaries, who don't accept something is right just because someone told them was right, not because they're rebellious, but because ultimately they want to do something that's even more meaningful. It also captures the spirit that my wife told me my career has been based on, which is failing myself forwards, a constant process of making mistakes that somehow have led me to going to more interesting and better places. So anything that allows me to talk about myself and my ego will always be good. I hope you enjoy this presentation. It starts when we were kids. This is a photo of me and my best friend Paul. Paul is the one with the wonky ear. We're still best friends, and yet throughout our life, this gentleman has got me into so much trouble. I'm sure we all have a friend like that. You know, he and everything that I've done that was good and bad is probably directly engaged and involved in it. When we were kids, we used to do such stupid things on bikes. We had our BMXs and we would convince our friends to lie on the floor, and then we would build a little ramp with some bricks and we would try and jump over them. And most of the time we did it, but sometimes we landed on them and it hurt. And I think back now and go, my God, what were we doing? Or skateboards. I wasn't allowed a skateboard. My parents knew that I would be a disaster, but my cousin had one and he loved it. And he loved it so much that when he broke his ankle on one, he walked 3 miles to the hospital in the hope that a doctor could fix it so his parents wouldn't find out, because he loved it that much. And then, of course, we've all done stupid shit to impress friends. Maybe that is a friend who's just a mate, or maybe it's a boy or a girl or someone else, but the stupid shit that we've done to impress them. And the thing I find really interesting is that whether it's broken hearts or broken bones, it was fun, wasn't it? There was a sense of adventure and we were evolving and learning and experiencing stuff. We were discovering who we were. It was quite an energetic, beautiful time. And then somewhere along the line, adulthood began. And I've got to tell you, I was not ready for that shit. In fact, I'm probably still not ready. And part of it is because there was this spirit that you have to conform to what expectations are or get rejected by society. And I just didn't like the idea of that. I mean, for me, this whole journey of life of just adventure and doing stupid shit to suddenly having to wear a suit and tie and be professional and responsible kind of made me feel a bit ill. So the way I got out of it is I joined the wild and wacky world of advertising. And I still love it. Even though I'm an old man, I love it very, very much. And part of that is because I've got to live and work all around the world. And part of it is who I've been working for. I've got a long history with this brand, the Swoosh, and I've loved everything I've done with them. But as I've got older, I've seen the industry change. It's become more professional, logical, compliant, consistent, and mature. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, there's many good things that come from that. But what's really bugged me is why we've done this. Because it's not been to actually make better creativity. It's been about being more efficient, about being more right, about making sure that everything we do is a bit more perfect. But the problem I have with it is that creativity isn't about that. Creativity is about tumbling down rabbit holes, just throwing yourself into different things that you think could be interesting and seeing where it might take you. And sometimes it might take you to places that hurt or confuse or make no sense. And you're wondering, why the fuck am I here? What is this doing for me? But somewhere along the line, you will come out. And what I love the most is that you find yourself in a place that's so different to where you began, a place that you just couldn't imagine, a place that changes the way that you look at the world and what's possible. And for me, one of the best examples of that was when I spent some time living in China. I was there for quite a long time, and I can honestly say I still miss it because it was the most exciting and educational time of my life. Now, I've got to admit, when I first told my friends I was going there, they all thought I was a fucking idiot. You know, I didn't know the language, I didn't know the culture. Like, why was I doing it? But for me, they were the reasons why I wanted to do it. I wanted to explore and understand. I wanted to know why the most influential market from financial perspectives was going to, you know, what it was going to do. I found that fascinating and intriguing. And when I went there, I've got to admit, I didn't understand why a lot of men dressed like that, or why there was architecture that looked like this, or why there was such pollution in a country that needed to attract more and more foreign investment. I just didn't understand it. But the longer I spent there, the more I realized that China was going through an incredible time of change itself. This is a photo of exactly the same place with just 20 years in between. One, a quiet, quite quaint place by the river. The next, a thriving metropolis that looks like it could have come from a Hollywood movie from the future. To be there at that time, to experience the change and the discovery, it was amazing, because what it did was more than just help me understand what was going on. It revealed to me things that I didn't know about myself, what was possible, what my values were, what I wanted to do. And what it ultimately meant was that it wasn't that I could just be efficient in the work that I did. It could help me make work that I never thought I would ever make. Work that, quite frankly, I never imagined, because my frame of reference was totally different in China to anything I'd lived in before, which is why I could make work for Nike that was nothing like anything that we had seen before. It's why I could be involved with the P&G Thank You Mom campaign to create work that really was true to what it was like to be a Chinese parent, which is very different. There's many similarities, but there are many differences. And often it's small things, but they're the things that allowed people to go, you're talking to me as opposed to at me. And even now, I'm working with this wonderful, eccentric Chinese fashion billionaire who owns most of the fashion brands around the world. And we've created this luxury street culture place in Beijing that has been designed to look like Mars. It's like nothing you've ever seen before. And while this might seem madness to many people, because I understood the culture and I understood where it was going and what it was trying to be, creating a place that felt like it was on the edge of the fashion universe makes absolute sense, because creativity might have revealed the possibilities of what we could have done, but the understanding from a new perspective, with the new education that I experienced, meant I could help ensure that that was set to explode. And what it really taught me was that I had to beware of those who blindly follow what has gone before, who say, but this is the way that we do things. This is the way that everything happens. Because ultimately what you end up with is a world where everything is exactly the same. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you're not moving forward. If anything, you're moving further backwards, because everyone is just having to be complicit to a system that's been working before. Now, in things like engineering and medicine, we need consistency. We need complicity. I'm not denying that. But in terms of creativity, in terms of seeing how you can impact the way that culture sees the world and does things in the world, my God, you should never, ever settle with that. But we're in this weird situation where there are many people out there who believe a different perspective is dangerous, who believe that anything that challenges order must be crushed, even in my industry, an industry of creativity. But what I find fascinating is that tension is a beautiful gift. It creates and changes possibilities in ways that you would never imagined. Yes, it might be painful at times. Yes, it might fail. But when it works, what it does and the impact it can have on people, on culture, on business, on creativity is unprecedented. There's an amazing TED talk by Margaret Heffernan. I encourage everyone to listen to it, but it is about how tension can liberate possibility. And it's true, because the music of The Who was created by the tension between John Entwistle and Pete Townsend. The whole essence of what the spirit of Nike is about has been built on the tension of what it is to be an athlete in terms of what they want to achieve and the barriers that often are only in their mind but stop them from wanting to do it. It's what's driven the Black Lives Matter movement. What, from my perspective, is one of the most important movements that we have seen in the last 20 or 30 years. It's not going to accept the consistent oppression of people of color. It's not. It might make people feel awkward, but it's these people who've said, we are not going to do this, not because we want to hate people, but we want to have equality for our people. That's what tension has done. It's allowed Tesla to make the electric car a reality. The electric car was not a new thing, but it was kept quiet, it was oppressed. But that tension of, we believe we can make a better way of doing this. We're not going to accept the old rules of how an electric car should look, allowed them to create something that basically revolutionized the entire motor industry, created a brand that made all the other car companies look old and have to catch up. Tension created the Pride movement. This is my friend. The fact that he is now able to feel that he is an equal, that he is valid in a world that still can feel that if you are gay, it is something that's wrong. That tension that he fights against every day and has embraced is a beautiful thing. He deserves as much rights as everybody to feel that he belongs. It allowed Rihanna to create the Fenty Beauty, where the foundation for makeup allows Black and people of color's skin to be treated with the same equality of people with white skin. It's only in the last 3 or 4 years that we have makeup that covers skin color that goes beyond white. That sounds madness, but she's not alienating me. She's going, I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to change this. But the rules were in the past, everyone wants to have white skin, which is bullshit, but that's what we've been told. But she was like going, I'm not going to do it. Tension allowed her to change stuff, but more importantly, allow people of color to feel that, hey, we're equal too. It created Greta. Greta single-handedly has given me more faith in the youth of society for the future than any of my peers. But sustainability is not a new thing, but she has brought it at a level that has created a cultural wave where people are fighting for it. You know, tension isn't about everyone being all on the same page. Sometimes it can eventually end up that way, but tension is about the driving force to want to do things that are different. Hell, tension created Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, the music of the 70s, you know, some of it's good, but it certainly wasn't ever Bohemian Rhapsody. But Freddie Mercury wanted to express something. He wanted to prove that he could do something. He wanted to bring different styles of music into a single. They didn't even want to release the single, but tension allowed him to create that song and allowed the band to fight for that song that now, you know what, 40 years later almost, is something that is known all around the world. And tension allowed every kid to just explore and discover, to jump over their mates on bikes, or to ride skateboards until their ankles break, or jump over cars, or ask out a boy or a girl, or just do something that started to reveal who they could be rather than who they were told they were. Because every single thing we value, from my perspective, comes from the tension of wanting to challenge someone's version and vision of what perfection is. That might be a government, that might be a parent, that might be a teacher, or that might even be yourself. And again, not because you want to be rebellious, but you want to just explore and see what is possible, what's possible for you, what you can change, what you can create, what you can move forward. And at the heart of all this, it's about the willingness to be vulnerable. Vulnerable's hard. I don't know about in Brazil, but I've lived in lots of countries where being vulnerable is often seen as a weakness. It's seen as you not knowing what you're doing. And so people don't say anything. They're worried that they might sound stupid, but stupid is a beautiful thing. Stupid allows you to try stuff. Everything that we now love and take for granted came from one person basically daring to be stupid, to try something, to explore something, to just see where it could go. And it's very rarely perfect the first time. In fact, I can't imagine anything that would be perfect the first time. But it has to start with somebody willing to try something, wanting to change something, wanting to embrace something that's not been done before, not because they're egotistical or just want to change it for the sake of it, but they believe there's something bigger or better and want to try it. Now, the reality is it's not always going to work. There's going to be times where it's a fucking disaster, quite frankly. But that's okay as well, because on one side, if it's a fucking disaster, you're going to at least know, what is the right thing to do. But more importantly, it might open up other things that you never imagined. When I moved to China, the life I have now, because of that, even when it was the mistakes I made, is because there was something in there that I learned. I had to try and discover things that worked, from my perspective, what my understanding was, not just what one person had written a book once and said, this is the only way, because society and culture change. And I believe that there is far too much focus on what was right rather than what could be right. And all I want to do is allow people that I work with, whether they're clients or colleagues, to have a space to be vulnerable, to try stuff and see where it goes. And I appreciate that we're in a market where people need to make money and not throw away money. But this isn't throwing away money. This is about creating a better future as opposed to a more superficial or short-term effect. So what I thought I would do that might or might not be useful is to talk about 5 ways to get back to stupid, get back to that spirit when we were kids, where we'd try stuff, explore stuff, discover stuff, make stuff, basically, make stuff that was about us and our take on the world rather than somebody else's. And the first one is ultimately, and it's hard, but you have to get comfortable with uncomfortable. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes a desire to want to just say stuff and feel stuff. And it might start off with you just talking to someone you trust about it, someone that you feel that you can be a bit more vulnerable with. But the more you do that, the more that you feel comfortable with being uncomfortable, the more that you're going to discover and learn and explore. And that might be by listening to other music. That might be spending more time looking at other people or events. That might be just listening to alternative points of view. But if you can get comfortable with uncomfortable, you're already opening the door to new possibilities rather than basically old truths. The other is something, this is my mum, and she taught me this, which was be interested in what others are interested in. Often we spend a lot of our time just focused on what we think is right, and we ignore other perspectives. But when you're interested in what others are interested in, not to judge them, not to tell them they're right or wrong, but just to understand why they're interested in it, it opens up so many beautiful things. China did that for me the most, I think. I mean, as I said, I didn't understand the culture or the society, but I had to be interested in it because everything that I thought was right from my Western perspective was very different there. And I was interested. I wanted to understand. I didn't want answers. I just wanted to understand. By having understanding, it allowed me to start really connecting rather than just trying to have tick boxes. And my mum was very focused on me looking at the world in that way, because there's far too many people who, talk about best practice. But best practice really is about the past practice. When you're interested in what others are interested in, you evolve with them. You see how society is moving. And by doing that, you can create work that basically pushes the times forward rather than just reflects the times of the past. Third is making better mistakes. I met this person once who was really good. And they were always good and they were consistently good. And then I suddenly realized, well, they were kind of phoning it in. They knew how to make things right and sound good. But ultimately, they were comfortable. And we talked about this, and we talked about what they could do or what they could try. Because I said, you've earned the right to make some mistakes. Like, everyone knows you're good. So, what else could it be? Where else could it go? Make some better mistakes. And it was a really interesting conversation, because they were comfortable in their comfort zone. But when they talked about what they wanted in life and the ambitions, it was all about moving things forward. And I kept saying, well, you can't move things forward if you just stay in your comfort zone. So try something new of something you already feel that you're good at. In my industry, there's a lot of research, and I have people who are really keen photographers, for example. And I said, well, try doing your job through photography rather than just through documents. Try and find music that captures the feeling that you want to convey rather than just writing it down. Just try something. And if it fails, it's fine, but it might open something up. But what will fail guaranteed is you doing the same thing over and over again. Because even though people like it now, there might be a time where you get left behind because everyone's moved forward and you've just sat in the comfort zone. And never, ever underestimate who can teach you something new. These three wonderful women worked for me in America. That's Maya in the yellow top, that's Brie in the middle, and that's Chelsea to my right. They changed my life. They changed my life in so many ways, and I'll forever be grateful to them. And I tell them this all the time. Because while they worked for me and I could have expected them to just do what I wanted, that wasn't my thing. I wanted to see the world as they see it. I wanted to understand what prejudice meant in America. I wanted to understand the hardships I've got, not so I could use it and benefit from it, but just to understand it. And those three women helped me see a world that has changed everything in terms of what I do and how I behave. Not because I was a bad person before, but I didn't understand the nuance of it. And by basically throwing myself into learning and understanding and just adoring these people, they have changed what I've done. And I hope, and I'm going to always work hard to always try and create environments that change things where they can always shine rather than be held back. And finally, just try new shit all the time. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you do. Read a different magazine every week, play a different video game, talk to a different person, or go on a different chat group and just find out what's going on. Just try new shit all the time. It doesn't matter almost what you do. It's just do something, because somewhere in there it's going to spark something that's different, that you're going to be able to think about as doing something different, but for all the right reasons. And in my industry, that's literally the lifeblood of what we do. And that's why I get so frustrated when people just play to what's been done before and do it really well. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're not moving things forward. And as I said, culture is always evolving. We have to be ahead of them, or we'll play catch up or get left behind. And it only happens when you try new shit all the time, because it stirs and ignites possibilities. And that is when things get interesting. Look, the reality is, we live in a world where everyone says perfect is the pinnacle. Perfect can't be challenged. Perfect is perfect. And as again, in some industries, I totally get that. But in my industry, that's a big fucking call to say that, because the reality is the future will go nowhere in the hands of the complicit, the people who will simply follow the orders of someone else, who simply will do what has been done that was like okay rather than amazing and pushing things forward. And if there's one thing I want you to take from this presentation, from my perspective, is to remember this: perfect actually stops possibilities. But when you're stupid, you start creating it. And I would love more of our stupid to create more interesting things, because society wants it, business needs it, and culture embraces it. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have any questions, comments, or you hate it, you can find me on any social media. But I'm very grateful for the time, and I wish everyone the best. Obrigado.